So, have you heard about the new Texas banning cell phones and devices in public schools bill that was signed by Governor Greg Abbott? I want to talk a little bit about this today because it could be a little more controversial than what a lot of people think. So, to shorten this thing up, to kind of give you an overview, kids in Texas public schools and some charter schools won't be allowed to use digital devices like their cell phone or a tablet in the public school setting in the upcoming school year. Now, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed this bill back in June, at the end of June, and Texas school districts are going to be given 90 days to create a plan on how to enact this thing. The bill took effect immediately when the governor signed it. That's the way the bill was written, right? And Texas public schools have 90 days from June 20th, 2025 to be able to come up with a plan. Now, this thing applies to 5 million plus Texas public school students. And this covers all sorts of personal communications devices, whether it's a cell phone, a tablet, text messaging apps on school issued computers, whatever the case may be. This thing is a pretty wide sweeping bill. Now, what schools can do is they can come up with one of two approaches that they can do with this. Students can leave the cell phones or the devices off campus all day long, right? They can leave them at home, leave them in mom or dad's car, whatever. Or they can lock them up in lockers if the schools still have lockers. A lot of schools don't even have lockers anymore. They can also put them in these yonder pouches, right? And we're going to get to that here in just a minute because yonder is a key component of this thing. Now, this is nothing new. This debate has been going on for quite some time about whether or not kids should use phones in the school. And I've read some of your comments online about this thing. And some of you say, well, I want my kid to have it. I don't want my kid to have it. It's fine. If there's a school shooting or some sort of emergency, I want my kid to be able to communicate with me because I can't trust the government PR people who are handling this. I get it. I've heard all of your comments and I've read all of your comments about this. And like you, I think this is just another quick judgment thing done by politicians who haven't really stopped to think the whole thing out. Now, here's where this thing gets a little sketchy. Okay, so devices are going to be allowed to be kept for medical purposes or for disability related issues or for safety issues, things like that, right? So I think now we're going to have to answer the question, what qualifies as a disability, what qualifies as a legitimate medical issue, legitimate safety issue, something like that. The bill is pretty vague when it comes to this. So I think there's going to be a lot of discussion amongst leaders on what is a disability, what is not a disability, what's a medical issue, what's not a medical issue. One of the things that we do know about this is that TEA will publish sometime in the next few weeks a model that they say can be used. Now, with this model, nobody really knows what's going to be in it, but what we do know is that the Texas government says that they're going to give $20,000 per school to enact some sort of plan. Now, there was some bipartisan research done on this. Republicans and Democrats looked into this thing. They looked at things like classroom distraction, screen time addiction, stuff like that, right? Cyberbullying was another part of this conversation. And critics of this bill, many of them Republicans, alongside some Democrats, are looking at emergency communications in the aftermath of things like what happened in Uvalde. Now, ironically, Texas has been kind of on this push to be the first to legislate morality and legislate more social conduct. Texas is the first state of 50 to allow this thing to come into play. Now, there have been 9 other states that have said that they're going to use this in some way, shape, or form. A lot of them are choosing to use these yonder pouches, which, again, I'm fixing to get into because I think this is an interesting conversation to discuss. So, in short, what happened was the way we got here was back on May 27th, 2025, the Texas State Senate gave approval to this House Bill 1481 that it was enrolled. On June 20th, 2025, Governor Abbott signed it into law with immediate effect. It's the way the bill worked. Okay. It kind of slipped through that way. Districts had to begin notifying families and students via email or media coverage, whatever, about this new law that's going to be taking effect here at the start of the school year. Now, the way that the rule works is by mid September 2025, every school district in the state of Texas, public school district, and some charter schools must have a plan in place to deal with this. So, again, Austin making demands, shifting the responsibility to enforce the demands back to the local level. We've had this discussion many times before about unfunded mandates. This is just an undirected bill. It's something that politicians do all the time. They have these great ideas, make them law. You have to deal with how to implement it and put it into place. It's just how politics works. And one of the things that we're going to have to look for here is how school boards respond to this, right? Whether they're going to have just a leave it at home policy, whether they're going to use a lock it up policy, something like this. This is all going to be probably discussed on local school board agendas. Unfortunately, the school boards are probably going to bear the brunt of the anger from parents and people who disagree with this. Of course, your local politician, at the state level is not going to have to deal with it. Another thing that we're going to look at here is the funding. How is the funding going to work, right? The funding is a big part of this. Are they going to retrofit lockers? Are they going to use these yonder pouches that are becoming so popular at even concerts and things like that? And then I think some parent groups are probably going to challenge this legally. I'm not sure that they really have a foot to stand on. They can probably use some free speech arguments there, or maybe some safety concerns. And there haven't been any filings yet on this thing. But I think that as a news media person, that's something worth monitoring. We don't really have a clear view yet on how much money Yonder has put into this lobbying effect to get these things put into our schools and things like that. We really don't know, but we know that there are some lobbyists, like here in Texas. I think Brad Shields was one of the ones that was very well-known lobbyist in Texas. I think he has, from what we've been able to gather, has a hand in this Yonder pot, right? Maybe some ed tech pot, stuff like that. It just seems like that's where we're kind of going with this. Is the lobbyists have been playing with this thing, right? They're trying to get this thing enforced. Politicians, they're sellouts, right? They're sellouts. They need money. Where do they get the money to run for public office and to fund their lifestyle? Lobbyist. Lobbyist is how America, it's the wheels of government, right? It's just how it works. Been some other lobbying players like in New York State, Patricia Lynch. I think she's getting like a $10,000 a month contract from some of these people to deal with this thing when Governor Hochul, whatever her name is up there, decided kind of kicking this bill around so they could be one of the first to do it as well. This is not uniquely a Texas thing. I mean, this is something that people have been grappling with for a while now. And I don't think it's going to go anywhere. But I do think if we need to follow the lobbying money with this thing, for sure. Again, I think multiple states have already looked at this thing. So, and then I think there was also this was really an interesting thing here. Republican, the RNC, they took like $56,000. They bought like $56,000 worth of junk from this company, worth these pouches, right? Back in, when was it, 2024, whenever it was, for their national convention or something like this. They said it was for software licensing. Now we don't know whether this is Yonder Inc. or there's a lot of stuff playing out there, but follow the money with this thing and follow the lobbyist. And I think this whole bill begins to look a lot more clear. I think one of the things that we need to keep in mind here as we follow this money, right, is that we need to make sure that a vendor doesn't necessarily mean that they're a contributor to the political campaigns. It just means that they're making some money and there's a back scratching kind of deal going on there. I think we need to clarify this, but we also need to understand that back scratching is equally as dirty and filthy as the lobbying movement. So, what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be combing through some of the data from the Ethics Commission, looking at some of these political contributions of some of these lobbyist people like this. I think that'll give us a real sense of how this bill works and how this bill made it to Governor Abbott's desk and ultimately got signed. Um, that's just how the dirty, squeaky, filthy, greasy wheels of government works. It's a dirty, disgusting thing, especially here in the USA when you look at it, how politics works. But there's a lobbying playbook at play for sure. We just have to figure out how the lobbying playbook is going to play out. So I don't know. What do you think? What's your take on this ban on this Yonder company, on these ed tech companies that are getting involved in politics and forcing some critical discussions at the state and the local level? I'd like to know what you think. Be sure to subscribe and also sign up for the newsletter. You can get that as well. It's real important. So I appreciate it. It helps me out as well. So thanks a lot for joining me. We'll keep this conversation rolling.